And I've started the recording. The date is June 7th, 2022. And welcome to the Cloud Custodian community meeting. This is the bi-weekly community meeting where we talk about stuff that's happening in the community, open PRs, issues, whatever's on your mind. We do have an open agenda, which I will paste in chat again. And if there's anything that you would like to add, feel free to do that. What I do is I have a script that runs and kind of shows what's been happening over the last 2 weeks. And if there's something that you want to discuss, stick a little boom emoji next to it. And that's how we're keep track of what we're discussing. Or you can always just add stuff to the agenda, prior to the meeting, like some people have, or you could just let me know and then we can add things to talk about. Usually we try to pick things that are interesting and might affect a bunch of people so that we can have a fun meeting. These meetings are recorded and being put on YouTube, so be cognizant of that. And as always, we're under the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be excellent to each other. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen with the notes, and then we will move along. Anybody new want to say hi? Anyone have like a burning issue or announcement? If you've got a burning PR or agenda item, feel free to put it in chat and we can get to it. With that, I'll move on. So we've turned on GitHub discussions. This is we've been tracking people coming in and asking questions via GitHub issues, and that was a forum with a template that people filled out stuff, and then that kind of put it into GitHub issues, and we had a tag called kind/question. GitHub discussions added a feature that allowed us to mass migrate everything under that tag into GitHub discussions. So I'm just going to show you that real quick. So if people have, if you ever have people ask you questions, it's just surfaced here at the org level, and it will kind of just take you directly to the repo discussions. And here we've imported all the, let me make that bigger. We've imported all the old questions. And I've organized it under cloud provider as well, under AWS, Azure, GCP, and general. So if you have questions, you could just ask them in here. One of the nice things is it lets users kind of mark when a question has been answered. And it kind of gives that person a thanks. So Sunny was able to answer this question, and that gets marked as a thing. And this is pretty nice because it kind of shows up under GitHub statistics and things like that, and you see that there's like a cute little leaderboard of someone who's doing helping out the community. One of the things I would like to do is get us to a spot where we can auto import useful things from Gitter chat into discussions, so that that just doesn't get lost in the ether, because searching through that stuff has just been not as fun, as we say. All right. So Shiny says, I want to discuss the Lake Formation PR 7273. I'll go ahead and add that to the list. Does anybody else have any?
It's at the top of the list, or in the that's.
Oh, it's already the first thing that we're going to talk. All right. Let me go ahead.
Thing, but yeah.
It's 7274, right?
No, sorry. I put a couple of key items not in the agenda items, not in the things like
up here.
So yeah, so one was moving cask and the other one was the data lake PR.
Okay, got you. All right, so we've got 7274 also on here, which, oh no, that's 7273. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my PRs. 1 second. Is this? All right, I'll just toss it in here and we'll get to it when we get to it. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So that's the discussions thing. Any questions on that before we move on? All right, Kapil, you added this one. Move cask from tools into its own repo.
Yeah. So I also wonder if anyone's actually ever used cask, but yeah. So cask is a Docker front end that makes that looks like the C7N CLI, except it is actually running Custodian and Docker Engine, and it's a bit of Go code. There have been a half dozen CVEs and various Golang Docker things, and it is the number one source of things that we have to update due to CVEs and underlying libraries. And as far as I can tell, no one uses it. At that point, I think it's still useful for us to maintain, but we should just I would rather just pull it out into a separate repo, so that we're not dealing with. And there's unfortunately also some. I was trying to update it the other day because there's still 4 CVEs against it, and I ran into. It's going to require some. It's not just a simple Go update. It requires some code changes. So I'd rather just have that pulled out, just so we don't have any flags on our repo. Any concerns, objections? Does anyone actually ever used it? Because I'm also curious about that. Okay.
I was wondering, what are people using then if they're not?
Oh, they just, I mean, you either use the standard CLI via pip install, or you use Docker and you just pass in the arguments as needed. And basically, it tries to abstract you away from having to pass environment variables and volumes and stuff. It's basically a convenience thing to make running Custodian and Docker look the same as just running the regular CLI.
Look like people have.
I've never used it.
So the CVEs are hitting the Git for Custodian for C7M.
So contributors on the repo get
the Dependabot thing, right?
Is there any other ones, or is this the only source?
There are occasionally other sources, but we basically try to handle those fairly rapidly. Looks like there is one against PyJWT, but that already got merged. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 right now against the cast tool, and that's the only one that's extant.
These things right here?
Yeah, those things. Like that second one is actually a Python dependency for Azure that's already been merged. And then the other ones are all Cask.
Working out.
Nice. Yeah, we got the PyJWT later on in the list.
And it looks like people fuzzing container libraries, which is great. More just better secure containers, but it is an upgrade. It's an upgrade hamster wheel for sure.
Okay, so I guess you're just going to do it?
Sounds good. Sorry, I was just talking on mute.
All right, any other questions on this one? And then I have release blocker, data lake PR, switch from resources to S3 filter.
I think this is what Shani was referencing. So, because I think it was her PR originally, and then we were trying to do some fix up on it.
7273.
Data lake is not actually a resource. Sorry. So Data Lake is an AWS service. Its native domain model is things like tables and queries, and except the resource that was added was a reference to S3 from there, and it wasn't clear. That's not actually that's not actually a resource in the Data Lake services model. It's just a reference to an S3 bucket. And so that makes more sense to me as if you look at the Data Lake tagging API, it doesn't apply to this thing. It only applies to its own internal object model. So having that instead as a filter in S3 would make it so that on the S3 buckets themselves, you can take all those standard actions. So I guess, this is probably a question for you, Shani, on, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, please correct me, on what the use cases were that sort of you had for it.
Yeah, so Kapil, the first use case I have is like if we want to check the lake formation created within specific account, and it's pointing out to external S3 bucket. So definitely we can use the external bucket with the lake formation. So if we want to check the lake formation in a particular account, how can we do that?
So you want to check that the lake formation resource reference is being created with accounts only, sorry, with buckets against buckets only in the same account.
Yep. And
Okay.
if there is any external bucket associated with it. So I just want to check and prevent all the lake resources which is specific to my account. And it should not point out to any external S3 bucket.
Could you put that on the PR? I have to noodle on that because are you also saying that you don't have any cross account like stuff right now, even within your org? It's all in the same account.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put that use case on the PR. Yeah, in the details so that you can look into that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And
does lake formation support like access points? Because the part of the challenge is that the S3 you'd have to have a separate value from with all of your buckets in the account as well, because there's no account ID in the S3 ARNs. But if you were able to use something like able to use an access point for it, then you're able to you're able to see that it's in the same account very easily. I just don't know if lake formation itself supports that. It should, but
yeah, that's the another challenge because S3 has global namespace and there's no way to look if it belongs to a particular account or not.
Well, true. Default S3 does, but like if you're using access points, then they do have account IDs in the ARNs.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I can dig more on the access point in the lake formation API, but I don't see anything else in lake formation API regarding access point.
Yeah, I think if you could put a comment in with just the use case, that would be super helpful. I think it also means that doing a filter, an S3 filter for lake formation wouldn't necessarily directly satisfy that.
Right.
Yeah. So what is it you want to do if you don't have it? I'm sorry, if it is not in the same account.
So I just want to check if it's not in the same account. I want to say we don't use it just to prevent our data.
To delete the resource or to notify?
Just notify as of now.
Okay.
Yeah. And do you have reference to the access point? You can you give me some link or so I can.
Yeah, if you just Google S3 access points,
Okay.
I'm unfortunately on a iPad, which I have.
I got you.
Cool.
Okay. Sure.
S3/feature/access point actually.
Okay.
Its own level thing there.
Okay. Cool. I'll look into it.
Also, welcome. Feel free to stop by at any time.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussions on this one before we move on?
And the current reason is the release blocker is if we change it out. Well, we're changing the name from being lake formation to being lake formation resource. But if we switch out from a resource to a filter, like both of those things have backwards compatibility implications. So I want to try to address that before the next release.
Got you. All right. Any other follow-ups on this? All right. Since you mentioned releases, I know that we targeted the second Tuesday of every month, and that's 2 weeks from today. And I know that we've been making some progress in there. That's my nice way of saying, Sonny, you got any updates for us? I know that we wanted to roll back some stuff, and I know AJ was involved. But he might not be here till later, so we might have to come back to this if you're AFK. All right, apparently so. Okay. So I have a few issues here that we'd like to discuss. This PyTZ dependency is not needed. I think Sunny and AJ wanted to talk about this one, but it's merged. I know that you two had a discussion about it earlier.
I mean, I can speak to it.
Yeah, do you have any color on this one? That'd be great.
Yeah, effectively TCP was returns back results with TZ information, and we had picked up a PyTZ dependency, and that dependency ended up conflicting between Azure SDK and GCP SDK, and we're like, well, do we really need this for GCP? We yanked it. There is maybe a little bit of nuance there, because PyTZ is effectively the whole time zone database shipped in the package. And if we don't have that, the only thing we guarantee that we know we have, then we're dependent on what's on the local file system, effectively, like what's in the OS. And that depends on whether or not you have the TZ packages for the TZ package installed on your local system. Most desktops do. Most operating systems have some subset, and then most containers don't have it at all.
Right.
And so if GCP returns back UTC, we're good, no problems. If it returns back something like American/Chicago, then we wouldn't necessarily have that. We wouldn't necessarily be able to compare that readily. So because we just don't, it doesn't, we couldn't compare it to UTC because we don't have the local time zone to reconstruct what that offset is. So there's a little bit, it's not clear that, it was a little bit unclear to me in what context GCP is actually going to return back a random time zone, so to speak, versus returning back UTC. And it could be on a regional basis. But I don't know why it would ever not return back UTC, but it is technically something that's available. And I think Sonny and AJ had more context. I was just poking around.
Yeah, it didn't seem to me that the inclusion of PyTZ, like, again, I'm not speaking out of like full authority here on what GCP is going to return, but it would surprise me a lot if it wasn't returning a UTC time, or wasn't able to deal with UTC time. The only potential change here would be to, instead of having a UTC now returns a time zone naive representation of UTC now. The only potential change is to maybe use the standard library to pass in the time zone to have it fully time zone aware. It didn't seem like
util versus
right.
standard library. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's the only thing to make sure that we don't get a date time aware versus non-date time aware comparison. Yeah. Thanks for that context.
All right. Anything else on this one? Setting minimum protocol version in CloudFront distribution fails. I think this was James.
Yeah, so I looked at
Or
this
no, this
one
is
as
you.
well. No, AJ I think was
Oh, this is AJ's. Yeah.
had self-assigned it. Effectively, when we go to set the values on CloudFront, if it's a value in a nested dictionary, like we merge the top level keys for setting, but we don't merge the nested keys. We override them, and that isn't acceptable for CloudFront, which causes this internal error. So you have to specify like the full set of things. In this case, the user just wanted to set like HTTPS like 1.2. And so instead of having them have to specify the full viewer options, they want to be able to just set the one line patch that they want to make, and we just need to make sure that we do a recursive merge with the current state of the CloudFormation, the CloudFront distribution with the user's intended patch.
All right. It looks like AJ's got this. I need to confirm with some tests. Fresh acknowledgement of the issue and a placeholder for potential fix. Cool. All right. This was a question I think that we are bringing up to people's attention. Easy way to automate Lambda roles. And then AJ and Jameson told me that they run into this a lot. And
so
AJ started
this kind of possible. Yeah, my concern is we don't know. We have stuff inside of the code that works and what permissions a filter action need. I'm okay if we added something in mainline, like as part of validate, to make sure that whatever the active role is has those permissions. The problem with generating the permissions is we don't know if that's the full set in all cases. And so it's much less safe for users. Like my concern is having a support burden on something where we don't have solid functional testing that validates that those statements are true. Especially when we get into execution modes and other things, and then you actually have to, there's two different permissions. There's provisioning permission set and then the execution permission set. And so I'm not comfortable, it can be used as guidance, and as we can distribute a out-of-band tool as here's guidance, we can stick it in scripts. I think we have a scripts/ops directory that we could stick it in, but I think there is a notional piece here that is not authoritative or necessarily the only thing you need. And then potentially on a validate, we could have a --im that also checks this, because I think we are clear that we have some set of permissions we absolutely need. It's not clear that we have all sets of permissions that we actually need. And there's also a differential on whether or not that there's effectively two different roles, two different principles that are potentially in play. The one that's being used to provision, say, a serverless policy, and then a separate one for the execution of it. Whereas go ahead.
At least for the provisioning part, that should be relatively static, right? I think that may be an issue that a lot of people getting started have.
Well, the issue is that you don't. The execution role doesn't always have permissions to provision. It's two separate identities in that context, right, that you have to check against. And if you're generating, are you generating one role for both? Or are you generating one for execution? Or are you generating one just for provisioning? And so it gets a little bit muddled if you want to be fine-grained. I guess if there's a simple, just do what I mean, then or make it work. So see, push the button thing, then going over permission is potentially fine for some folks, but yeah.
All right. Any other opinions on this one? All right, AJ. I know you're watching the recording, so.
And I think I would also, reiterate, even on the permit, while we validate the correctness of the permissions on our annotations for filters and actions, we don't necessarily validate that they're all the things needed. Like if you missed one in the implementation of a policy or doing code review, that would effectively become a runtime failure as well.
Actually, I guess that brings up like the question of why are we manually annotating filters and actions with permissions? Like, could we not just inspect the clients and like basically do a static code analysis on that to generate that out?
Yeah, we could. This notion of annotating predated the client side the client side monitoring stuff in the AWS SDK. So, and we also do this. This isn't not so. Well, it's also we would need to do something similar in GCP. We don't do annotations yet in Azure. The Azure permission set is different. It's probably the right way to say it. We would also need to be functionally executing everything to have it. I don't know if we would say that the unit tests are enough. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. It's definitely something interesting there. Currently, with the unit tests, we have out-of-band clients that are also doing API calls, which aren't part of the permission set necessary per se. It's worth exploring.
All right, moving on. This is a long one. Or this one has been multiple weeks here. Specify subproject as dev dependencies here. I think this is more AJ. Do you have any color on this one? And has been working on this for a while.
I think AJ does a fantastic job of describing the problem.
Yeah, we can skip this one because he wasn't able to make it. But
I think just to describe current state, summarize it, like effectively right now we have each separate provider defining its own dependencies, and we do a bit of hackery-wackery to when we do the install to make sure that everything installs into the same virtual end, and that requires occasionally dealing with conflicting dependencies between the different things. The notion here was to try to invert that to make the top level C7N, at least in code, in the Git repo, depend on all the subprojects, which would effectively mean that we get a single unified poetry lock file instead of having separate ones per subrepo. Doesn't really change the fact that we would potentially have conflicts. It does change, however, the fact that to get a working dev environment in that context, you would need to be able to install everything. I have noted some of our dependencies had really poor support for certain platforms and runtimes. Google, cough, gRPC, cough. It took they literally just got M1 support in the last few weeks for gRPC Python. And so that would have been a blocker for doing any development on M1 on Custodian, whereas with the current setup, you can as long as you're not touching GCP, it would have been fine. And they also took about 4 years to get Linux ARM64 support.
Yeah, that's what you're saying here. I get it. All right. We'll table this one then for when AJ comes back.
And I'm super excited about Python 3.11, which has significant speed improvements, and the dependency graph that supports that is pretty fragmented right now. It's like a 30% speed improvement.
Wow. All right. This is kind of an older one. This is the CIDR ingress bug fix. I think this one's been back and forth for a while.
Yeah, so I put this one in. This is to support list of CIDR when doing filtering, comparing to see if something belongs within the list of CIDR. There were another PR which we closed in favor of this one, since we believe this one, the solution is more elegant in terms of not making the value filter code even more gnarly. That was the feedback that the consensus people that were involved in the other PR. We wanted to go with this PR. I believe, Kapil, you kind of look at this and you say, yeah, this is what we want to do. And I believe the last time what needs to be done though is there's two items. One is the original contributor. He I believe he's from Capital One, and we need to get him to sign the CLA.
He's not a Capital One. He's at another company. He doesn't really do AWS anymore. He's primarily in GCP. And he has contributed significant things from GCP. I can try to reach out to him, or we can try to. I think his PR branches are generally pushable on the like if you have the maintainer bit flipped on the repo, so we can try to do the work, I guess, as well. I can try to reach out, or we can try to do the work for him.
Yeah. Okay. Will you be able to reach out? Yes.
Can you CC me on that? I can help out. I can help with that.
Cool.
If you could just make the intro. So worst case, we could get like what, verbal agreement from them to just merge it and then do a follow-on PR with our own stuff, or
it's an interesting topic because I think he wrote this when he was at Capital One, so technically that's covered under that CLA. And we would just explain to the CLA auditor folk when that time comes. Yeah, I mean, that's one option. I did make some progress, by the way. I don't know if anyone else gets frustrated with our current CLI tool on. I have been exploring with CNCF on whether or not there's alternatives we can use, and talked to a few of the top members in at KubeCon, Cloud Native Con in Europe, and they were open to the foundation better supporting the project's needs, let's say. And so we may be able to, I think the only requirement is that we can host it ourselves. It has to be run as foundation infrastructure. But outside of that, there was some consideration that I'd like, I think the problem is this, as soon as you enter into the Linux Foundation tooling, and it's not intuitive or user-friendly in any shape or form, in my opinion. And so switching out to something like SAP's CLI bot, which is open source, would potentially alleviate a lot of the pain. It's relatively straightforward because you don't have to sign up for a separate account and everything to click through.
Okay. All right. So meanwhile, what about this one? Why don't we talk to them first, find out what their intent is, and then we move from there? Or because ideally we want just take it and do what you want from him, right?
Yeah, we'll take the action item, George, and for me to follow up in CCU and just see if we can get that cleared. I think the flip side is we can also, if we want to just directly start working on this, and then I think we have enough, we have clear, like maybe we just get like an email or from him on, yes, confirming his employment or whatever under the previous CLA to cover off on this. There's not, I forget exactly when we switched over to the CNCF CLI. It'd be worth recording that date. Like, I think we'll come into other PRs like that when we get to older PRs that we want to try to get over the finish line. So this is not, it's not isolated to this. And so I think it's worth sort of us defining a process, potentially even talking to CNCF Foundation about it. You know, all like how do we deal with effectively extant people that have already signed what was the project's previous CLA when it was
Right.
contributed to the CNCF, which I want to say was sometime in 2020.
I think it was already in place by the time I got here, but
I'm super fuzzy on these dates. I think
right.
it would be useful. It's useful for us to document, I think, for the other PRs as well that are older.
Okay, and I'll start bugging you then to contact this guy. Last one. This is just a sort of one. This is just the same one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of these booms here related to things that we've talked about. 7277. Who's this?
This was awesome, by the way. This one was really nice. I'm super
Oh
excited.
yeah.
Super excited to see this because it's been like a known big to-do item. But we now, this is definitely a release. It's a big one, and it's a release highlight. It's a lot of it's copying some of the WAF V1 implementations, but it also did all the legwork on testing and everything, and was really quite nice. So,
nice. All right, so thanks, Harish. Let's see. There's AWS Lake Formation again. There's that Pi JWT dependency. And a bunch of the issues closed are because they were questions that we moved to discussion. So that's why those are making that kind of noise. That leaves us with release stuff. Sonny, are you back at the keyboard?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So it's the first Tuesday today of June, and I know we were trying to do second Tuesday. Do you have an update for us? What's I know AJ wanted to roll back some stuff. What are we thinking release? Where's your mind at releases right now?
We need to fix the lake formation stuff if we don't have that resolved. Like worst case, we would have to yank it to get the release out the door on that schedule. The alternative would be to push the release. If we want to keep to the cadence, then we would have to effectively yank that PR and figure out what we want to do outside of the release cycle.
Yeah, there's that one, and I think the only other one is the GCP time zone aware time on the metrics filter are the two big blockers.
I don't know if I think the TZ one hopefully is the one-liner. So
yeah,
big is relative in that context.
The commentary on the cross account lake formation stuff has been really useful today. But I mean, we can aim for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's as aspirational. I wouldn't say.
So I think we want to generally hold to doing the release schedule. And so in that context, I think the right thing to do is to just back it out as a resource, and make the release on the schedule, and then we come back to it to get it in a way that makes sense. And so we don't have to fix compatibility after the fact. We don't have to deal with backwards compatibility issues around this. So I think it is probably the right thing to yank it, figure out what we're going to do, and then merge that independently of the release of this current release.
I see Darren nodding. What do people think?
Yeah, for me, my reasoning for agreeing with that is, master, we should keep it clean, right? If there's an issue with it, we should yank it out, regardless of whether or not we're gonna have a release.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
and
I think it's.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pratyush.
No, I was just saying it's a good idea to back it off for the release probably, and then figure out what we want to do.
All right, and Sonny, how does this look like? Does this look like last time where you're doing the test Pi PR like the day before kind of thing?
Yeah, I'll get the prep PR out. And then we were talking about having AJ drive the release this time, but once we get that PR up, it should be fairly smooth sailing.
Okay, cool. And he's not here, so he gets assigned stuff. All right, so I'll follow up with both of you out of band then.
And then Fawn in the background on the other thing you mentioned. Sorry, are we done, George?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Open agenda. Who's got what?
So Fawn dropped the question in. So it's not in resources JSON because C7.org basically drops separate files in separate account folders, separate region folders. When you do the C7.org report, it takes the values from accounts.yaml as it's pulling all those different files and spits out the unified output with the account ID, name, and I guess you can specify tags there.
Yeah,
but it was never in resources.json. So it was,
I think that was surprising, right? That initially didn't see it in CSV and said never was, but then recently I started generating JSON reports to upload into BQ, and I saw that the whole tag block in the accounts.yaml shows up in the corresponding JSON report file. So
if you're doing a report, you should be able to access all the account values. If you're looking in the resources.json, they won't be there because they're being pulled from accounts.yaml.
Yeah, so they're missing in the CSV, but they're present in the JSON reports. And so
they are missing in the CSV, you're saying?
Yeah, they're missing in the CSV.
I think you have to do a custom field for that to get that. You have to do like a -F something. George, are you recording action items, by the way, on the meeting notes? Because if so, can you put one in there for me on that? I'll try to get a comment on.
Yeah, I mean, it's not urgent. It'd just be nice to know if there's either something missing from the CSV, or
it's not missing. It's defined as an optional that you have to pass a flag to, I think, for C7.org to put that into the CSV. The CSV is intended to be more minimal based, and you opt into additional fields that you want, whereas the JSON is trying to be, this is all the data we have.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, it's just want to know. I would like to get them back into the CSV because that's what mostly gets distributed to humans. And
so
they are
I think you already can. I think you just have to. There's a syntax for specifying which tags you want. Let's say, like you to opt into those fields in the CSV report. I think it's like a -F. What's it -F?
To pull in values from the accounts.yaml when you do the org reports.
Right, like in the same way that there's like flags for pulling in things from resources.json. I think that there might be a syntax for doing that with accounts. I have to go double check though.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be really great if you can take a look and just ping me on that discussion. It'd be awesome to know that.
Okay.
All right, so my work item then is to make Kapil leave you a comment on 7444.
It sounds like you're supposed to nag me in it.
Yeah, I just created like in my to-doist, I have a whole project. It's just like remind Kapil of, and then it's like a list of stuff.
That'd be awesome. Thanks, Kapil.
Yeah. That'd be great, because that's why we have discussions now. We could just bank that stuff and start to get the corpus of knowledge out there. Anything else? Sorry, Fawn, I missed your initial question there in chat.
No worries.
Anyone else got any questions? Anything burning? Steve, production good, looking good? Nothing on fire?
Well, as for org, is there some plans to expand like the org stuff, like service control policies or anything like that, or maybe the structure itself, the account structure in org using Custodian?
You're talking about doing modeling organization,
like as a
like
resource, org as a
Yeah.
resource. It would be awesome because I have 5 orgs and
so C7 and org will never grow. I don't think we'd actually do that there because we have to know you have to assign the principal and credential for the different orgs.
right.
But the separate notion of doing model an org and or org accounts as a resource, I think is valid. Like we do it in GCP, like as far as folders and org structure. So I think there's definitely utility in it, especially when we when we talk about like SCPs, you know, in
SCPs
particular.
especially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'd be able to like as an action assign it to an account or something like that, or delete it from an account, detach it. They use attach and detach.
Or tag management on the accounts as well.
Tag management, exactly. Yeah, and that would be cool if you could somehow link those tags into the C7 and org outputs. That would be great.
I mean, the C7 and org accounts file, the script that we use to generate is just using org's API to go grab that.
Right.
So I mean, we're really good to generate the org account file. What you're talking about isn't really about orgs in that context. It's about Custodian itself not having a native resource around it. Now, when you talk about running C7 and org across different organizations, like we're not going to support that. Like that's really, you know, because you have to set up the credentials and whatever.
No, what I do is I just have a CSV that has the org and like the you know the information I need to switch from C7 and org to the multiple.
Right.
I just have a little CSV.
Well, that's your shell script that sets the environment variables. Like we're not going to be able to.
Yeah, no, that's not a problem. That part's not that big a deal. It's actually doing.
But no, the SCP and yeah, I hear you. Org and OU or
yeah, that too.
Org account and OU. And sorry, so there's 3 potential resources there: org account, OU,
organization of the
and
OU. Yeah,
so and then like a folder, I guess, or sorry, an OU, and then the O, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like from a modeling or from a management perspective, are you talking about all 3, or are you talking about?
Well, it would be
2,
cool. Like so, like I have well as many as I can have service control policies, but sometimes I get them a double assigned, like at the root, and I'll have it in an account. It'd be cool to like be able to manage that with Custodian instead of using a CLI or something. I use CLI now, but
right. And then from on the SCP management aspect of that, you're just
because you could use
the
IAM stuff you have now. It's basically the same thing for the policies. Finding 2, I guess you could do some of the IAM function that you have on the resources against SCPs.
Yep. So we already. So IAM, the check permission stuff already works with SCPs. We're just passing through to IAM simulate. So you'll see it. It'll flag if it's being blocked by an SCP.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Anyway, that's that would be neat.
Cool. And with that, we're basically out of time. 6 minutes back, or any other last minute questions? Are you all waving, or are you raising your hand to ask a question?
Bye.
All right. See you later. We'll see everyone in 2 weeks. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.